viewers, welcome to our show today. I am so excited to have you because I am so excited to introduce you to one of my favorite people, Roger Bolton. Roger is the president of PAGE, a global professional association for corporate chief communications officers and PR agency CEOs, whose members help their enterprises build brand and reputation and earn trust by developing a strong corporate character and authentically engaging with key stakeholders. Roger has held numerous C-level communications positions in some of the most iconic companies, including Aetna and IBM. And more importantly, to me anyway, Roger is a personal friend and ally and one of the best leaders I've ever encountered. And we really got to know one another over the past 2 years, where together we helped lead PAGE and our members through tumultuous times. We'll talk about those, I'm sure. But let me just say, people who know Roger are better off as a result. He is a strong supporter of the communications profession and especially of seeing women, minorities, and people of difference succeed. Viewers, please join me in welcoming Roger. Roger, welcome to our show today.
Thank you, Charlene. Our friendship goes back many years, but the last 2 years were, you're right, an adventure. I mean,
Yeah.
Who knew we were going to have a pandemic and a racial reawakening? And for you, as chair of PAGE, my boss, our partnership during that time was one of the most joyful times of my life. And you are indeed a great friend and a great leader, and I'm privileged to be a part of this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I should tell you, viewers, it is a mutual admiration society today. So you're going to hear that. And, I recall when I became the chair of PAGE and you and I are talking and I'm taking in all this information and figuring out, okay, how am I going to leave my mark? And then George Floyd was murdered, and you and I were on the phone, and I said, I just feel like I need to say something. And you encouraged me to do that. And that meant so much to me because there are so many leaders who might have said, well, don't get ahead of yourself, Charlene. Let's just see how this plays out, would have given all kinds of caveats. And you were right there behind me saying, go for it, say what you need to say. And that gave me all the encouragement that I needed for the next 2 years to say what I felt needed to be said and to be able to make that difference. So Roger, thank you for that.
It was so clear that you were the leader of the moment and that we needed that leadership and that strong voice. And in fact, the way I remember it, you encouraged me to speak up and said that my voice was also important.
Yes.
And I was afraid to say the wrong thing. And you said, you got to do it. And so I did. And both of us, encouraged by each other, took a strong position of leadership in our profession around one of the most important issues that we've ever encountered.
Right. Roger, one day you and I are going to have to write an article or a blog post on this, because it's a time that two of us came together, a white male, Black female, completely different experiences, but both felt that what each other had to say was really important at that time. So at some point, I know that's not what today's show is about, but at some time we should really write that out, because there was something really special going on there. So Roger, tell us about yourself. I always have the first question that nobody likes, but everybody wants to hear, which is, what is your origin story? What's your story?
Yeah, so when I was a teenager, I was in that kind of why am I here place, trying to figure out existentially, who am I? And I came to a conclusion that on my deathbed, hopefully many years from then, I wanted to be able to look back and say that the world was just a little bit better because I was there. I didn't know what my why was going to be yet, but I knew that I wanted to make a difference somehow, and for the better. What I cared about at that time was politics and government and the ability of government policy to make people's lives better. And I studied political science for a short time, but it seemed theoretical and just I couldn't quite figure out how to get into it. But I loved journalism. I was volunteering for the school newspaper. I was not a journalism major. So I changed my major to journalism, and I worked as a reporter after I graduated. And then I was having trouble finding my second job. So I quit. I moved to Washington only because I had a friend there. And she said, you know what, we've got an extra room, come to Washington. I went to see the congressman I've been covering as a reporter, and he offered me a job as his press secretary. And I thought, that's the end of my journalism career if I say yes, but I'm 25 years old, unemployed, leading Congress. Why not? So I did it. Within 2 weeks, I realized that I was able to make a difference for him. And then I had a 16-year career in Washington. I worked in very senior levels at USTR and Treasury, where I had played a small part in helping get approved the Uruguay round of multilateral trade negotiations and the Brady Plan. Together, those things with other things have raised billions, literally, of people out of poverty around the world.
Amazing.
And then somehow I found myself at IBM and then Aetna and realized that business has equal potential to make the world better. And today, with government paralyzed by polarization and tribalism and hatred, I'm so glad I'm in the private sector where I'm dedicated to stakeholder capitalism, helping business to create societal value. So I just had this unplanned career where along the way I had little chances to be a part of something that, arguably made the world a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. That's such a great story. And, you were so far ahead of your time. And I also find as I've talked to different people in doing this show, people almost always say that I fell into what I was supposed to do accidentally, that it wasn't this completely planned out career path, right? We all knew we were going to do something, but we didn't know exactly where it was going to land us. Now, when you were at Aetna, you were responsible for quite a large, culture transformation. Tell us what that was like.
So when Jack Rowe got to Aetna, he hired Ron Williams to be, because Jack was a doctor. He didn't know anything about running a health insurance company, but he knew a lot about healthcare. So he hired Ron Williams, who was the best operating executive in the business, and the two of them were going to transform the company. And I'd worked for the previous three CEOs. I was part of the old team, and they're shoving people out the door left and right. And I figure I'm next to go. And I said to Jack, do you have your own person in mind? He said, well, let's see how it goes. And I thought, well, that's not an endorsement exactly. But three weeks later, Pam says Jack wants to see you in his office right away. And I'm in the elevator going up thinking, it's okay, I'll find another job. And I get there and he says, I want you to lead the culture change. So Jack's leading strategy, Ron's leading operations. The big three was culture. And I'm suddenly the leader. What? Where did that come from? What about Elise, my partner who runs HR? No, we don't want it to be an HR thing. You need to have Elise be your partner. So I had the tough job of telling Elise that, I've been asked to lead it, but I need you. And we were partners the whole way through. And we had to figure out how to work with Jack and Ron to bring their vision to life. So if you're changing the strategy and the operations, people have got to be able to fulfill it. And the culture that we had was completely anathema to the company that we aspired to be. But figuring out what that culture was and then getting everybody on the same page was the job. And Elise and I did it together for 6 years.
That's fantastic. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the experience, right? So you are head of communications and you've been tasked to lead this culture effort. Understand that leadership doesn't want it to be seen as only an HR initiative, although the CHRO is a Black woman, and it would be easy for her to feel like she was pushed aside. I'm not saying that she was, I'm just saying it would be easy for her. And you really made a concerted effort to bring her along with you as co-partners or as co-leads. Why did you do that?
She was the one who did it. She gave me a huge gift. The good news is we were friends already. We shared an office space. We worked together very, very closely. We had deep mutual respect. She could have dug in her heels and been difficult, but she immediately embraced my leadership, and we were co-leaders from the beginning. We were equal partners in every possible way. Her team was, not real happy, frankly. They felt it was wrong. But she brought them along. I'm just completely indebted to her. She's the one who did it.
Right. And I know over the years, because we have known one another, that you always speak so highly of her. So I hope to
Yes,
someday be able to hear her talk about you, because I'm sure it's quite mutual.
we're
Now,
still
one
good friends.
Oh, that's great. One of the things that I see, is certainly as a coach and in coaching women, and it is really women still seem to be challenged with understanding or accepting their value. And even recently, I had a conversation with someone who's a new client, and their question or concern to me wasn't, how is coaching going to help me? It was, am I really worth the investment my company is willing to make? Right? How do we help people get out of that mindset?
That's just stunning to me and
Mhm.
just so discouraging. I mean, she wouldn't be there if they didn't think
Right.
she had value. They wouldn't be
Mhm.
investing in her if they didn't think she had value. She needs to find that. I mean, look, she knows she's contributing. She has to
Right.
know that. She's making a contribution there, and they want her to figure out how to step up and do even more.
Mhm.
That's just step in. I mean, I don't know
Right.
what else to say other than, I mean, just think about what you've done and the difference you've made.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not taking credit for the Uruguay round and the Brady plan, right?
Right.
Other people dreamed those up, but I had a small but key role in
Mhm.
helping those things happen. So what is your contribution? How are you making it? And how can you do it better?
Right, right. And I tell people to, and especially women, although I'm finding it with young men too, that increasingly, is to, change that soundtrack, in your head that keeps
Yeah.
telling you that you're not good enough, or you don't deserve this, or that you were lucky to have this. Because, companies are not charities. They don't have you around just for the heck of it, right? Right.
Quit apologizing before you speak.
Right.
Quit
Oh.
introducing your comments with, well, I'd really like to say just one thing. I mean, if I
Mhm.
can, pretty please. Come on, just say
Right.
it. Don't, you're
Yeah.
devaluing yourself with your own way you're approaching the dynamics of the meeting.
Mhm. Gosh, Roger, I think our viewers needed to hear that from you, right? Because sometimes, women talking to women, and it's just not the same. It's just not the same. And so it's always good to hear those things, so you get that encouragement from men as well. So you've had this great career. You continue to have this great career where you're able to make a difference. At what point in your career did you say to yourself, I know my worth?
Hmm. You know, when I started working for Bud, I knew within 2 weeks that I was adding value because I found little ways to add things into what I was writing for him, and he would take it and change his view a little bit. And I thought, I'm making a difference here. But the big surprise was 2 years later when he named me his chief of staff. I was
Mhm.
27 years old, and there were people on
Wow.
my staff in their 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Mhm.
And it was given to me. I mean, he just bestowed that upon me, and I had to step up, and I did. He had confidence in me and gave me the latitude to do it. But if your organization places trust in you, it's for a reason. And step up and embrace it and know that it's you're there because they want you and they need you.
Mhm. Now, some women, I couldn't agree with you more, Roger, but some women would say, or some people would say, that sounds really good, but the challenge in being someone different is getting the organization to have that trust,
Yes.
right? How do we do that? How do we know how to do that?
I think you have to just be determined to make a difference. And sometimes it requires guts
Mhm.
because the signals you're getting suggest that they don't want to hear what you have to say,
Mhm.
or that you're saying it the wrong time or the wrong way or whatever. And so finding a way to first know what you're talking about, understand the business and the
Right.
issues, understand the business and the issues that they're dealing with. See it
Mhm.
from their, understand their challenges, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Be able to think strategically about those challenges so that you're adding a different and a new perspective that they don't have. And then
Right.
have guts and the EQ to find a way to speak up in the right way at the right time with the right information. That's not easy. I mean, there's a lot there.
Right. It's important to understand that timing matters as well. That, sometimes if you have something to say and it's a contrary opinion, the person who needs to hear it doesn't need to hear it publicly in front of everyone else. Have the EQ to wait until you have a moment to pull them aside and have that conversation.
Exactly right. I mean, Elise and I were trying to get Jack and Ron to
Mhm.
do an employee survey, and they were resisting us. And we just think we don't understand. But we built some allies, and
Mhm.
found a way to pull them aside, and just kept going at it and kept going at it. Found different ways around. Years later, Jack said, "That employee survey that I did, that was the smartest thing I ever did." Okay, fine, Jack. You're right.
All right, that's usually how it goes. Roger, speaking of allies, in my experience in watching you over the years and what I've learned about you, you have always been an ally for women, for people who are underrepresented, for people of difference. Why is that?
And I don't know. I don't. Am I really? I try to be. I want to be. I just want everyone to have a chance, right? Everyone should have a chance and should be able to bring their whole selves to work. One of the things that I've learned through the journey we've been on together from you and from others in recent years is that some people just don't feel that they belong. And that feeling
Right.
of not belonging just requires us to be even more willing and able to take the extra little step to make sure that the junior person who's a little different feels that she's really there for a reason. We want her there and we want to hear her and we want her to have opportunity.
Right, right. In one of my keynotes, I talk about the idea of which we all say in our minds as we're climbing the ladders. We just want that seat at the table. And at some point in my career, and as I said, I have this in my keynote, I realized that getting that seat at the table is really important. But what's more important is whether or not everyone else around that table is comfortable with you being there. And that's where you get into inclusion and belonging. Because if they're not comfortable with you being there, then they're not really going to listen to you. And I think it's an interesting journey for people because, I can't make you comfortable with me being there. That's something that has to come from the other individual. At least I think so.
I think so too. And as white male leaders, we sometimes assume that people are going to feel comfortable and that we don't have to make the extra effort, but we do. That's what I've learned.
Mhm.
And it's really, really critically important. I mean, that's one of the things about, this Zoom world that we live in now, that
Mhm.
it's more difficult to have the kind of our team did our offsite in person, and I hadn't seen people in a couple of years. And I said to one of the junior people, I feel like we never talk anymore. And she said,
Mhm.
yeah, we don't.
Ah, wow.
And I thought, wow. And so I'm now making an effort. I asked Ann to set up calls for me with some of the junior
Mhm.
people on the team who they just don't feel like they have access to me. And I mean, when we're all in the same space, that the informal, how are you? How's your
Mhm.
mom? Are you still doing that? That kind of stuff, just to make people
Right.
feel that you care about them, that they belong. It's
Mhm.
really important.
Yeah, and I think the challenge for many of us and for companies is to, and leaders with their teams is to have those conversations or have that time set up, even if it's on Zoom, and not have it be a meeting, but instead a conversation of just getting to know you, right?
Mhm.
And that's a different kind of leadership style.
That's what I just realized I wasn't doing.
Mhm.
It. Change, I was just assuming we were is all like it was before, but it isn't.
Right, right. Yeah, I increasingly have Zoom happy hours, and I tell people bring your cocktail, bring your
I love
mocktail, it
it.
doesn't matter, but let's just have a conversation and talk about nothing. Right. Of course, my only employee is me. So, and my two dogs who are horrible interns. But anyway, so, Roger, the name of this show is Know Your Worth, Command Your Value. So I have to ask you, what advice would you give someone of any age or any stage in their career or in their life, how to help them know their worth, but even more importantly, take the actions to command their value?
Yeah, so just be determined to make a difference. Every place you go, you're there not just to fill out forms and do the technical stuff. You're there to make the place better. So what does it take to do that? Right? You've got to be willing to step up. You've got to think strategically, as we said, think
Mhm.
strategically, know what you're talking about, add value, bring in things that they may not want to hear.
Mhm.
And it's difficult to do that, but finding a way to bring value is really,
Mhm.
really critically important. And it just requires all those skills of strategic thinking and guts and EQ to make a difference. Fully agree.
Yeah. So, Roger, I so appreciate having you. I have been looking so forward to our conversation because any opportunity to have a conversation with you is a good one. So I really, really appreciate it. Viewers, I hope that you have enjoyed hearing from my friend Roger. And as you know, we don't have a lot of men on this show, so we only have two men. And so I'm really glad that Roger agreed to be here. And thank you for being such an incredible leader for Page, which is just an outstanding organization. And we so appreciate you. And hopefully you know that.
Well, I'm very honored to be a part of this conversation. And as you said at the beginning, it's a mutual admiration society. So I treasure our friendship, and whenever we can have time together, I always do. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. And viewers, I hope you will tune into our next show. I will not preview who we're having on next, but I hope you will tune into our next show. And in the meantime, just in case no one has told you this today, you are enough. Thank you.